Hey, Bruce, how you doing? This is Catherine again. I'm doing this new, what I'm now it's calling it a vid podcast from Lake
Hmm.
Wales, and
Okay.
we wanted to talk a minute, I think, about what's going on tonight at the City Commission, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So tonight at the Lake Wales City Commission, the commission starts at 6 o'clock. You have to be there early now if you want to speak. There is
Hmm.
the first sort of comment section you can speak in. You're allowed 5 minutes. And then also this ordinance, the second reading of Ordinance 2023-11, which is the one that will allow the city staff to change zoning on the property out off of Hunt Brothers Road where they want to put this big plastic pipe plant
Hmm.
from light. They're going to change they want to change the zoning from light industrial to heavy industrial, and
Hmm.
so that they can put in this plant. But now if they pass this ordinance tonight, it will allow the staff to do that.
Okay.
Correct?
Hmm.
And we don't really have an expectation that we're going to ask the city commissioners to vote no, but I think that they're not going to do that because of what they've done in the past.
Hmm.
So this is kind of a big deal. If people want to come out and speak, tonight's the night to come out and speak. And then we want to move on to what we're talking about here. I was very interested in your story about you growing up in Lake Wales. And so we decided that we would let you kind of tell your story of why you're so passionate. You're living now in Highland Manor, correct? How many years have you been
Correct.
there?
Highland Park. Yeah, four
I'm
years
sorry,
now.
Highland Park Manor.
Yeah, 4 years now.
4 years.
Hmm.
And so you've returned to your hometown, but you grew up here. So I'm going to let you tell your story, okay? And I'm going to kind of be in the background.
Hmm. Well, truthfully, my story seems to be coming back around because my story is just a walk from my home to school, growing up in Lake Wales. And not knowing it then, I was witnessing the industrial model, I'll say, of Lake Wales. And as a youngster, and all the kids in my neighborhood going to school, walking up Washington Avenue and crossing over 27, was a story that we really didn't know the significance of it until we were grown people. And I'll just take you on my walk.
Well, and explain exactly where that is, because a lot of people are new to Lake Wales and they
Mhm.
don't know these neighborhoods. So tell them exactly where that neighborhood
Well,
is.
it's really northwest or west Lake Wales, on the west side of Highway 27, uh, which was our designated territory, if you'll put it that way. Uh,
And
which
it's
is
over there across from the Florida's
yeah,
Natural.
Florida Natural, which at the time was Donald Duck. All right.
Okay. And there's a little lake over there too. What's the name of that lake?
That all comes into play. That
Okay.
all comes into play. I'll tell you about the little lake. But first, as youngsters, we had to pass on our way to school and back to school, or anywhere we were going outside of our two lane neighborhood. We had to pass an open burn pit where the city trucked its garbage daily, and they would go behind some trees right off of the road into a little alleyway, and then it would open up into this huge burn pit. And the only reason I know how huge it was is because one day, as a youngster, I was so curious to find out what was going on back there that I slipped down that little alleyway just to see this burn pit, and it was just huge. It reminded me of the hell that I read about in my Sunday school class. I mean, the ground was just charred. I'd never seen anything burnt like that, and there were mounds of garbage just smoldering. And then there was a truck in there that was about to dump again, and they were going to set that afire. And that just let off a flare of smoke and carbon and paper, partially burned goods up into the air, and it would be all over the neighborhood pretty soon.
Well, the
So
ashes, you're saying the ashes from the burn pit.
yeah, the ashes. Yeah. So we had to pass that every day.
And back
And
then, there
then
was no designation of like a hazardous waste dump or anything. People were just putting everything
it
into
was
those burn pits.
that was it. That was it. It was no rules. It was just the only rule was is that you put it somewhere where it wouldn't bother the people that really mattered.
Well,
Uh,
and to be put this into context, this was happening all over the country, where this is how people dealt with their municipal
mhm.
solid wastes.
They're solid waste, right?
And a lot of times they were placed in near communities that did not have the political power to stop it.
Well, the thing is, let's say it like it is. They put it into the black ghetto, right? Where people didn't have much power to say no.
Correct.
And that was the industrial model. Whatever you did it, and then you took the waste from that and you dumped it in the black neighborhood. The poorest people in town, the people with the least amount of say so of whether yes or no you could do that. But then after you pass that dump, you pass the graveyard, and then to the right, about a half a mile down the road, was the sewage plant. And that sewage plant used the lake in front of our house as its dumping ground, I guess, or their refuse or whatever. And that thing would smell sometimes. It was unbearable. You would close the windows, you would go inside just to get rid of the smell. But they really totally polluted a lake where you couldn't eat a fish out of that lake. You didn't want to go near the lake. You didn't want to dip your toe in that water. So again,
Well, when I first
we've got
moved
the
here,
waste.
I think they were still putting all of the solid waste out of Donald Duck. You know, they would put all the peelings and all the stuff that was not used in the making the process. They put all that in the lake. So certain times of years, particularly
Well,
the summer, it was very strong odor.
well, before that, it was just raw sewage that
Yeah,
was going in there. So
got you.
so we used all our hard waste, and we burnt it right in my neighborhood,
Right.
not a half a mile away. And then the lake in front of our house, you use that as to dump your raw, maybe some treatment you did to the waste before you dumped it, but you killed a lake. um, and
Yes.
then as you crossed 27, you ran into the packing house of the juice plant, the juice factory, which at the time was called Donald Duck. And they dumped their peelings outside on their hard top in their yard, and it festered there for days, smelling up the place. And you could always tell when they were doing their thing as far as the factory really going, because you'd get the waste from the peeling, the micro peelings. You would get that in the air, right, and it would land the next morning over your car, your house, or anything else that was sitting out. So the industrial model of Lake Wales was to do our business, and the waste from doing our business, we dump that in the black neighborhood. Now, little did we know that there was something that the EPA now calls the silent killer, that all of us were inhaling and digesting into our systems, into our lungs and into our bellies and into our blood system, something called particle matter. It was so small you couldn't see it, so small you could hardly taste it, but it would fill up your lungs and was so small that it would pass the blood brain barrier, as they call it. It would get into your blood system, and it would lodge into all of your organs, including your brain, your heart, your kidney, your liver, and your lungs. And because it didn't kill you right away, they said it was non-toxic. Well, you know, radiation doesn't kill you right away, and but they don't call that non-toxic. The smoke from cigarettes don't kill you right away, and we thought that was non-toxic, or asbestos, we thought that was non-toxic. So many things that we call non-toxic because you don't die right away from it, but it systematically hampers your health and kills your body. And we had so much cancer in a small community of people that surrounded the waste refuse of Lake Wales. And now this plant factory makes me think I'm living in a Groundhog Day. They want to
Deja
put
vu.
this. They want to put this plastic, this pipe plastic, 500 yards from where our subdivision is right now in Lake Wales in Highland Park Manor. Our subdivision line where we start is 500 yards from where that plant factory is proposed to open.
Right.
And they're now telling us, well, they admitted in the last meeting that we had with ADS that there's no such thing as zero emissions. And the city council tried to convince us that there are no emissions. We went down there and there were no smokestacks or whatever. But the young lady, the vice president of their environment issues, admitted that there's no such things as zero emissions, right?
Well,
And
I want to go
because
back to your story just for a minute. Let's not
Mhm.
get too off the beaten path yet.
Well,
You're walking to school, and then tell us sort of like,
Mhm.
about, why you left Lake Wales and what happened to your mother as well. I think those
well,
are relevant to you.
you know, uh, uh, you left Lake Wales because there was really no opportunity in Lake Wales for you. You only had so many teachers and so many preachers. So if you were going to do anything as a Black person leaving Lake Wales, you had to leave. You're going to
How
do
old were
anything
you
with
when you
life.
left?
I was 18. Almost as soon as I finished high school, I got my books and I left. But the thing is, so many people that suffered through those emissions of the dump, the sewage, and then Donald Duck canning plant. So many people around there. We had just I guess clumps of our community that were infected with people getting cancer. And I don't have any pure evidence, but I think breathing that stuff for so long is what killed my mother at age 48. She died of pancreatic cancer. I think it's one of the things that exacerbated her situation. And there were other people, the lady that worked at the drugstore, who was a very young lady, a young mother, who was so nice and just died of cancer, and other people around the Donald Duck canning plant and so forth. Women mostly that I remember, but nobody's really documented it in such a way that we will know what a cause was. But at a certain age, there seemed to be women coming down with cancer, and a lot of them died, and I'm sure a lot of them suffered, even though they may have lived. So that's the thing that just fills me with so much passion now, is that we investigate everything to the point of not just saying, hey, it's not toxic, then it won't kill you today, so it's not toxic.
Right.
There are many people that live in my neighborhood that are elderly, that may be sickly. There are many young children growing up. You remember when I was growing up, they would say, well, lead paint won't hurt a child. And now they're saying that the emissions from this plant is not non-toxic, so it won't hurt a child. It won't hurt grandma. It won't hurt ma. You're telling me this, but you're not giving me empirical evidence on this.
Well, and going back to the open burning pit in Lake Wales for municipal waste, eventually that was shut down by the EPA, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. And I think, as I recall, that was done because this was going on across the country.
Across the nation.
It was across the nation, yeah. And they came in and shut that down because it was, they were burning paints and plastics, and
Mm-hmm.
plastics were relatively new back then, but there was still a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it starting to be
Mm-hmm.
in the environment, and so all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff was being burned, and people didn't seem to, in local communities, did not seem to be able or willing to stop it because they didn't understand the danger of it even.
And well, if they cared at all, they probably didn't know the danger.
Correct.
Like right now
Which
we
is the
don't.
way people did things too, but at the same time, you that it wasn't the local community that stopped that. It was the
No,
federal
it was
government.
not. It was not. The local community really had little to say, except they
Yeah,
were comfortable. See, they were comfortable doing what they were doing. It's
right.
comfortable to send those trucks across the highway away from away from their kids to our kids and
Right.
burn it. That's a
Well,
comfortable
and
thing to
I
do.
think that this is one reason that you have the passion today for, now that you live out in Highland Park Manor, and that
Mhm.
community has a lot of concerns
Yes, we do.
about this factory being
Mhm.
placed in such close proximity to, and I know a number of people out there that were raised in Lake Wales
Mhm.
um, as well.
Mhm. And plus, not only the emissions, but we have some houses that are right across from the plant factory, and they're concerned about noise all night long. They're
Right.
concerned about lighting all night long. We're concerned about the traffic, which they says will be ending around 2 to 4 p.m. And that's when our school buses are bringing the kids back home. And that's going
Well,
to
and
be
I'm concerned
terrible
about
traffic.
water. They say that they recycle their water that they use to cool the injection molds and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But also, there is water, from my understanding from talking to the engineer up at uh, Winter Garden. There is a concern about wastewater. They have wastewater going into their municipal system. We
Hmm.
were told at that ADS informational meeting the other night that they will not be using a commercial septic system, but if they pass this thing tonight, there's no way we know. I said tonight, if the city can permit and change the zoning from light to heavy,
Hmm.
then it's the equivalent of um, you buying a house, signing the papers that you're buying the house, and then trying to negotiate the terms for buying the house. It's just
Absolutely.
the opposite
Right.
of what should happen. You
Right.
negotiate the terms, you do your due diligence and investigation of the property you're buying before you promise to allow or to purchase the property.
Hmm. One of the things I didn't iterate when I was talking about my childhood is that the kids at school used to kid us, the kids that lived in certain neighborhoods. They used to kid us about the three Ds. We had to walk past the three Ds: the death, the dump, and the Dookie. And I added a fourth D, which was Donald Duck. You know, so it was death, dump, Dookie, and Donald Duck. That was our plight every day, walking back and forth to home or wherever we were going, whether it was to club meetings or whatever. That's what we had to endure, and that was really a shame because nobody would have let their kid go through that who had some real power or some say so. That was, and now we're talking about uh, lighting, we're talking about noise, we're talking about traffic, we're talking about pollution from trucks, we're talking about even pollution from the factory itself. Now, one thing I want to bring out that really some of my friends that are in the environmental business keyed me into was that they are fighting one group, I think Oceana, is fighting plastics in the oceans, right? And what they found is that just from floating in the ocean, plastics give off microscopic bits of what they call microplastics. And those microplastics are so small that you can't really see them. But they found fish and other animals just full of these microplastics that either the fish are confusing with food, like krill and so forth, but they're finding these microplastics in the organs of fish. So if you have microplastics coming from just floating plastics, might you have microplastics coming from heating or melting plastic also?
Well, there is
I
also
don't know, but
VOCs. There's also volatile organic compounds that are released from these things that you can't really detect with just what we call a sniff test. You know, you can't
right.
and
You
see all
can't
that stuff.
sniff this out because what if you take too big a sniff, you're taking in a lung full of microplastics or whatever. But the thing is, our city council has not. They have not done any sort of studies except going down to the plant saying, "Well, I sat outside in my car and I didn't smell anything."
Which
Well,
you and
guess
I
what?
did as well, right?
You can't smell carbon monoxide,
No. And, you
but you
know,
better not smell it too long.
I think I'm going to have to end this interview pretty quickly because I don't think that people on the internet listen to too long of things. But I wanted you to close, you know, just to talk a little bit. You know, you have had a pretty interesting life since you left Lake Wales before you returned, and just to talk a little bit about your accomplishments. You know, after you left Lake Wales, and then why you came back, and then we'll close the interview. Also, I want to put up. They had that informational meeting at the Lake Wales Arts Center, and I'm going to put up a banner that says, that tells where that the people at the ADS said to call. I'm going to have to type this for a minute. This is where people should send questions directly to the company. Let me see if I can get this to show up on this. Oh, come on. Oh, show the banner. I'm learning how to do this on this program. But they said if people have questions of ADS to send it to Darren@adspipe.com. So we just encourage the community, if you have questions about this plant that you don't feel like we have, that has been answered for you, which we have those questions ourselves, particularly about the environmental and some of these light, sound and traffic, send them to this address. Okay. And I want you to go ahead and tell us a little bit about, what you did after you left Lake Wales, and leave us on sort of a high note, because I think it's exciting that you've come back here.
Well, after leaving Lake Wales and going to college at Florida A&M University, I after the military, I wound up in New York City, and where I had a career in banking and on Wall Street, trading and as a financial advisor for a number of years. And then I finally came back to Florida, to Orlando, where I landed in what they call the investor relations business for quite some time, helping companies that wanted to go public on Wall Street, and went down to the Caribbean for a few years to work with a startup company there, a communications company, where we had telecommunications, cellular communications on each one of the islands in the Caribbean. And I was the managing director there for about 3 years. Came back to Florida and Orlando, and in Winter Park, my compadres and I established a commercial and residential mortgage company for a while, until monies ran out in 2010 on Wall Street. And after then, I basically retired and started, really learning things for myself, like how to build businesses on the internet and so forth. And got married about 4 years ago, and moved to Lake Wales.
And you have a very lovely wife as well.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoyed meeting your wife.
Right, and that's where I am now, and I'm dedicated to the fact of making Lake Wales a better place to live for everybody. Lake Wales has a very, very excellent opportunity to unite and build a beautiful and peaceful community for people that want to come here and get away from the hustle and bustle. You want to be safe. Lake Wales is a place to be, and we want to keep it that way. And I think this is the prime time for us to do it, and I'm dedicated my whole life to that right now.
So tonight at 6 o'clock, come a little bit early because you got to sign that little sheet of paper that they've instigated. And yeah, which, yeah. But anyway, come early and talk to people outside the room. And also there's a lot of other issues on the agenda. You know, we encourage people to join the city commission and to come out and speak about the things that they're concerned about as well. So thank you so much, Bruce. I'm really enjoying getting to know you better. And thank you for sharing your story.
Well, thank you, Catherine, and good evening.